Hello, Marie, and welcome to the show.
I'm so freaking excited right now.
I am so grateful to have you here. And for everyone listening, Marie and I are in the same mastermind. So I just knew when you first joined that group, I was like, I just am obsessed with her. I went to your Instagram. I'm like, this girl is totally my vibe. We need to become best friends.
That's exactly how I felt. It's hilarious. I was like, I hope she likes me. Like, I love everything she's doing. I love everything manifestation. Like, I feel like we're really going to get along if we just chat a little bit longer.
I love it. And that's exactly how I felt about you. And I know you just launched your podcast, Weird, Wild, and Woo. And I wanted to just say congratulations. And I know we're going to do a podcast swap. So we're going to record yours after this. So I can't wait. But welcome to the show. I'd love for you to just introduce yourself to everybody so they could get to know who you are.
Yeah. So, hi, I'm Marie Reginato. I'm a 2-time cookbook author and I host a lot of cooking videos. But recently, as Giulia said, I launched the Weird, Wild, and Woo podcast. And I really, over the last 2 years, found myself in this time of life where I was starting to evolve as a person and I felt really trapped and boxed in. Like I couldn't allow my business to evolve alongside my evolution. And the point and the passion behind the podcast was so that I could break free from that I could really start to step into everything that I am, like all the weirdness, all the wildness, and all the fun woo-woo things. And it was just this time of my life where I'm like practicing being me again. Away from social media, on social media, all of it, just like really coming back to who I am. And that's what I'm absolutely obsessed with talking about now, is like really activating other people into that. And so you'll see me doing that on my Instagram and on the podcast, and just in any way I can really light people up and make them feel electrified by life. And that can also be through delicious food too. So it's all of it now, which makes me so happy because I'm a Gemini like 4 times over and I need versatility.
I love that. And I love how you're making this transition in your business, which I'm sure we're going to talk about a little bit later. But I would love for you to really kick it off with where this all came from and how this started when you moved to LA 11 years ago and really went through this huge life change. I'd love for you to share that with our audience.
Oh my God. Okay. Yes. It's funny because when I look back on it, there have been these 2 massive pivotal moments in my life where I feel like everything really links back to it. And what Giulia was talking about is actually, I broke up with someone. We were together for 11 years and it was the start of my Saturn return. So I was 27 years old. And about a year before this is like when Instagram was really taking off. It was about 2015 at the time. And I saw someone do photos of food. And I had studied agricultural business. And I'm like, wait, what is this? I really hate my job. I'm making absolutely no money. I'm living at my parents' house in San Francisco. Like I have big dreams, but I couldn't figure out like the way in which to make it all happen. But I saw this outlet of creativity, of food, and I saw the potential. Like I just had this feeling like there's so much more here. Let me just go after it full force. And so for a year or so, I would just show up on Instagram and I was working full time. And the only time I had was the morning. So I would take a photo of my breakfast. So I kind of became known for like smoothie bowls and porridge. And then after a while, like I really got into the food photography side and developed my skills just based off, trial and error. And at the time of the career was starting to blossom on Instagram, but the boyfriend that I had, like we were definitely, that relationship was becoming so strained and it hit a wall and I'm like, okay, I'm feeling very stuck and frustrated. And I could tell there was like this pent up energy that just wanted to be released. And so when we broke up, it was so wild because this is when I started to understand a little bit more about manifestation and energy work, but like not really. Like I read one Gabby Bernstein book and that was about it. And right when we broke up, about 2 months after that is when a publishing house reached out to do my first cookbook. And so it was this crazy time in my life where I had freed up all this energy from leaving this relationship, leaving a job that wasn't feeling fulfilling anymore, or actually never did. And it was like, finally, like I could create something for myself. And it was this forward motion that just kept me going and going. And I was feeling so electrified by it. And then I ended up, it was just this random, and I know you talk about manifestation and downloads and thoughts. And it was this random download that came through. And I'm from San Francisco. So we're definitely bred to hate LA, like for no reason whatsoever. And all of a sudden it was like, you're moving to LA. And I'm like, what are you talking about? That's like absolutely no fucking way. Like, no, it's just not a thing. It was like, no, yeah, you are. And I'm like, okay. And I just sat with it and I took a trip down here, and everything that I had described that I wanted for my life, it was in LA. It was waking up in sunshine, hearing birds chirping, walking to yoga, an area where I could actually live alone now and out of my parents' house, because I had been there for 5 years. 5 years. And, you know, I was definitely embarrassed by that. At this point, I was 27 years old, or maybe even 28. And I'm like, okay, I need to move on to new things in my life. And so I packed up. I knew 2 people in LA. I had no job prospects. I had a little bit of savings because I needed to feel like I could be comfortable as I was diving into the food world. And at that time, I was like, I know the big goal that I have for myself is videos, and LA is perfect for that. And then just, it so happened that everything started to fall in place. An old friend moved down here, and she's one of those people, you know, where you don't have to talk to them for a long time, and then immediately you call each other up. She calls me up after a year and she's like, Maria, where are you? I heard you moved to LA. I just moved too. And then she ended up coming on board as like my quote unquote brand manager, like partnership thing. And then she worked for a food company, which then I got to partner with them and do like 2 years of cooking videos. And so it was this momentum again of just like trusting this intuitive pull that I had this greater goal. And I was so fixated on it. So fixated to the point where I remember I felt like so boxed in, and maybe we can get into this later, but it was a lot of fun, but I could feel myself molding into the idea of what I thought a TV show would want for a cooking video host. So I became uber polished online. I remember I fell into the niche of only plant-based for a very long time. And I felt like I needed to create these recipes that then would like add a little bit of chicken, although I don't even really like chicken, or maybe a little bit of meat, but I don't even like meat. And because I'm like, well, what would the food shows want me to be and act and do? And it was this like, again, like this crazy, like masked version of myself. And I could not take it anymore. And I didn't even realize that it was like running my life. And then things just started to not sync up anymore. And I had to question that. I'm like, there's so much more. At the same time of like things not syncing up, me having these realizations, I was also starting to see that I had so much that I wanted to bring to the table, more than just food. I wanted to add to it. I wanted to go deep and talk about all these things that no one was really talking about, and this evolutionary change that I was undergoing, that I wasn't allowing my business to go into, and thus nothing was really working. It was really scary. And this was right before the pandemic. And now 2.5 years later, I'm like finally finding my groove again. But it was a freaking wild ass time. It was wild.
Wow. I have so many questions for you. I love your story. And thank you for being so vulnerable, because I know that's not easy to really go through these big changes, these big life changes, and be like, I was living as not the best version of me. Yeah. And even in my content now, I'm kind of making a pivot, which we've talked about a lot, even like before when we were talking before getting on the podcast. And it's like, it's scary to be like, well, I built this brand and this business around things I love, but it's not 100% me. And that's really vulnerable for you to come on here and share that.
Oh my God. And that has been the scariest thing to talk about, because I built this level of success. And even before coming on the podcast, I had to go back into my memory and like see everything that I'd done. And it really took my breath away. But But all it did was made me see that if I can do it once, I can do it again. But I had lost this trust and this faith within myself because I was like in this deep state of paralysis, like analysis paralysis, where I was so scared to pivot because I did have this success. And like, what are people going to think? And can I trust myself enough to really like hone in on something? Because what happens if I want to pivot again?
Yeah.
Oh my God. But it's like, that's kind of the point of life. If a lot of your business is based and revolved around you as a person growing and evolving. And when I think about it, the best people that I follow, the ones that I look up to and admire the most, they're constantly changing. They're constantly adding to their business, and they're just doing it like a year or two before I am. And I'm just in awe because it's something that I'm desiring too. And I just want to thank you for allowing me to come on here and to talk about this, because I don't feel like many people do. It's just everything seems so shiny and perfect online, but I've been struggling for 2.5 years now of like, how do I add to my business? How do I pivot? And how do I bring my biggest expression of me online? Whereas before I really was, oh my God, like Instagram will pull up old stories from 2 years ago. It's ridiculous. It was
Oh my God.
It's like everything was scripted. No one could know the real me. It couldn't have been further from the truth. It was hilarious.
Wow. I so resonate with that. And I think this also brings me back to the question I want to ask you was, when you went through that breakup, how did you make that big change? Because maybe there's someone listening who's like, there's something I got to do, whether it be a breakup, leave a job, start a business. And it's like, you have this deep down maybe desire, but it's so scary. So what would you tell someone who's in that position if you could go back to that version of you that was in an 11-year relationship and was like, I'm ready for something new?
It's so wild that you say that because it was the last thing I wanted or expect to have happened.
Wow.
Especially when you're invested I was 16 till 27 years old, and I was so like in love and so obsessed with him, and we grew together. So it was like he saw so many different versions of myself and I saw so many different versions of him along our journey together. But it just wasn't working. And I remember, like, I'll never forget this moment where I always just wanted to live in the same city with him, but it was not happening. Like, he was going to move somewhere else again. We were always in different spots. And I actually wanted to move to New York, and I had my good friends, they still had an apartment, like a room ready for me. And I told him, I was like, I don't even think he knows the importance of this story and like this moment in our relationship, which I don't know if he'll ever listen to this, but this is hilarious if he ever does. He's a great person, so it's all good. But I'll never forget, I was visiting him in DC, and he had told me, he's like, I know you want to move to New York. I'm going to move there after my master's program, and why don't we move in together? I honestly didn't care. I just wanted to be in the same city. So I was like, all right, like, sounds good. We were eating sushi, or no, it was ramen. And we were at the bar.
I love ramen.
It was so good. I'll never look at ramen the same though after this. He doesn't even look at me, and he's like, so I'm going to move in with my friends when we move to New York. Didn't address the fact that he was the one who told me initially he wanted to move in with me. Wow. I'll never forget. I just turned away. I almost started to laugh. And in my head, I was like, I am so done. I am done. Like it was crazy because it wasn't like this huge thing that happened where I couldn't forgive him, but it was like, oh, there's a saying where it's like death by 10,000 cuts, or it's something like 10,000 cuts, where it's you slowly bleed out. It's like this slow, drawn out process of like, I just can't do this anymore. I can't. And as that was happening, I finally started to see this light at the end of the tunnel, but it was because I had this creative pursuit, this creative endeavor that was so separate from him. He was not involved in the photography, in the food world. That was something that was so pure from my heart that I could really cling on to. So someone could take that as maybe not a healthy thing, because instead of clinging on to him, I clung on to something that actually made me so happy. And that would be my biggest piece of advice, is to play around and to experiment and to find something outside of a relationship that lights you up almost more than the person. Because at the end of the day, like, all we have is ourselves. And I'm such a romantic, so I definitely think if you want to find the love of your life, you absolutely will. But at the same time, like, I needed to go on this journey of being alone, and I've been single pretty much for 6 years. But I lost myself in that relationship. And when I really dedicated myself to food, it was the first thing in my life that I dedicated myself wholeheartedly to. And so that would be my advice, is to find something so beautiful that just like, oh my God, you see potential for yourself that no one can gift you but your own.
Yeah.
And I wish someone would have told me that. And it was hilarious because when we broke up, everyone was like, well, finally. And I'm like, wait, what? And then again, like all that energy, all that stagnant energy. And I see this like with the women in our mastermind group who go through breakups, or my friends in general. When something is not meant for you and you let go of it, it creates so much space for everything that is to flood in. And it's the most magnificent thing you will ever go through. I promise you, it's hard as hell, but what's on the other side is the most beautiful experience. But it's waiting for you to change. And that's
Oh my God. That story, Marie, you are so inspirational. I am so inspired. And especially because even in my life, like, I've had my own fair share of toxic relationships. Mine didn't end as pretty as that story. But I know that feeling of being like, fuck. And I remember, you know, because I had been in a pretty serious relationship myself, and before I now met Marcos. And I remember that same feeling of like, I need to let this go because it's very toxic to my life. But it's like, you think it's forever. You think this is the person, this is the right thing. It's supposed to be this way. It's supposed to be up and down. And I remember being so afraid. Like, I know that feeling. And I was so afraid. And it was right before I was going to study abroad in Italy. And I know we talked about, we both went to Florence.
Yes.
Literally has my heart. And I just remember being so afraid. And I was like, you know what? And I just went in head first. Now I'm looking at the time, it's 2:22. And it's like, I always think back to this moment. And I'm like, if I didn't let go of what no longer served me, would I be here today? Would I be in the healthiest, happiest, most loving relationship? Would I have this business? Probably not, because I would be afraid of being judged for showing up online. And it's like, even a lot of my students and my clients, like, they'll be like, I'm afraid to do this, I'm afraid to do that. And now it's almost like full circle of like, well, what's the energy you're surrounding yourself with? What kind of situations are you in where the people around you may judge you?
Yeah. I mean, what you just said there is so beautiful and so powerful. And sometimes in that moment, you can only, it's hard to envision a life that's going to be so much better. But it really is in retrospect. Like, when I look back on it, that was one of the biggest moments in my life that shifted everything. And it's just, I'm so proud of myself for like finally giving into something that I knew would shake my life up. And it doesn't even matter how hard it was. It was like, I trusted myself enough that there was something was going to greet me on the other side. And I actually think that is something that maybe someone who is in a similar situation of needing to leave a relationship that isn't serving them anymore, whether it be romantic or business or anything. But it's, what I think helped me mentally was, along with the food thing, as I was taking action on that, I was trusting myself again. So I was repairing this sense of trust within, so that by the time I took that leap of faith of ending it with him, I could trust that there was something better on the other side. So that could be like another thing, like start to play around with how you can gain trust with yourself over time. Because, oh God, it's beautiful. When you can do that, there's nothing better than trusting yourself. Because then you really can do anything you want. You really can.
That is so powerful. And I've personally been playing around with trust too. And I think it's also after joining the mastermind and seeing that
Yes.
life is so much more than business and social media and really
Yeah.
getting deep with all, like, you guys are like my sisters now.
Amen.
But like, one thing that I'm doing in my life, maybe this will help someone listening, is trusting myself to work out, even if it's not the first thing right in the morning. So I used to have this like lack of trust to myself when I was working my corporate job. And I was like, if I don't work out as soon as I wake up, I'm not going to do it. And it's like, I held this belief. And only like in the past 6 months have I been playing around with not working out as soon as I wake up and actually instead diving into the work that makes me the most excited, like my creative work. So every day looks different. But even today, right? Like, I was so deep in like helping my clients. I was doing my group call, and I was like, at around 12 o'clock, I could have either just sat here and continued working or went to the workout. And I was like, you know what? I trust myself that I'm going to feed myself, nourish my body. I'm going to cook a healthy lunch. I'm going to go
Hell
for a
yeah.
walk, get some sunlight. And now I'm going to go do my workout after this. And it's like, that trust where it's like, if this was me, even just a year ago, I would have been like, the day's over. I
Yep.
can't do it. I don't trust myself, this, and that. And now I'm like, I never do anything right? That negative self-talk. And now I'm playing around with something just even as small as that. And now I'm holding myself even more accountable because I just shared it on here.
Hell
But
yeah.
like, just going to do that, that's how you build that trust with yourself. So I love that.
Oh my God. And I'm the same way with working out. I've had like this is hilarious because my whole business has been centered around food, but I have had such a warped relationship my whole life with body image and, oh my God, in working out, not trusting myself too. And what in the last probably 6 months or so, this is like, so we're paralleling right now. But what I have found that really helps in terms of working out is I'll just kind of lie to myself a little bit and I'll be like, Marie, you're only going to work out for 15 minutes. Like you can do that. And then I'm like, oh, the endorphins are making you feel good again. A little sweat on. I'm like, okay, 10 more minutes. Oh my God. Okay. I want my butt to look a little bit better. Okay. 5 more minutes. Oh, what about my arms now? Okay. 10 more minutes. And then you tack it on and you're just like, again, like you got yourself there. And like, let's see how much more you can offer. And I just love that because you're not putting too much pressure on yourself, like just the right amount to where you're actually doing it and gaining trust again and gaining like a beautiful, sexy, lean body in the meantime.
I love that so much. I think I have to try that.
Yes. Just lie to yourself a little bit. It's perfect.
That's so juicy and so good. And I don't even know if I would say lying to yourself because I'm actually reading Atomic Habits. Have you read that book?
Yes, I loved it.
And James Clear actually talks about doing that. He's like, when you're trying to build a new habit, he's like, just commit to doing it for 1 minute. And he literally says, like, you could do 1 minute, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever it is. But he said, one, like, case study, someone lost 100 pounds by just saying that they were going to go to the gym 5 minutes a day. And they left after 5 minutes. And then when they kept going back after like a month, they're like, well, now I'm here. I might as well say 10 minutes.
Oh my God, that's it. I think that's so beautiful because you're giving yourself permission to actually change. And grow. It's not like we need to hit the ground running when we're implementing new things into our life.
Absolutely. So speaking about the permission slip to change, when did you have this moment where you decided that, I know you said it was like around the beginning of the pandemic, but you just launched the podcast. So when did you have this moment when you're like, I'm really ready for something new in terms of your business?
Okay. So now we're going back. This is probably 3.5 years ago. So I think it was January 2019 because I was turning 30 that year. Yes. Okay. January 2019. My cousin came to visit because she's also an entrepreneur. And I could already tell within me, I was like, I have mastered the photography. At that point, I had done national ad campaigns for a whole host of brands, like featured in Bon Appetit, Martha Stewart. Like this was a big dream of mine. And I did it. I checked the box. And I think at that point had done like 100 cooking videos, worked with like top people. And I had checked that box and the cooking videos were always my favorite thing to do. But I remember I'm like, but I've done this now. And now there's more, and I could feel it. I didn't know exactly what it was. And then my cousin came to visit in January, and we were strategizing for the whole year. And she just looked at me. She's like, Marie, like, I can tell you're not satisfied. Like, what do you want to do? And I was like, I want to do, like, I love the food stuff. I want to do the videos that I know I want to do. But there's also this part of me. And I was like, I think I want to do like retreats and, you know, like speaking engagements and like just really like lighting people up. And I don't know how that's going to be. Like, I really don't know how that's going to be. And then I cut myself off. She didn't come in and cut me down. I willingly just totally boxed myself in and cut it off. And I was like, I don't know how that's possible, so it probably won't happen. And she's like, okay, well, all right. So she's like, well, why don't you just put that out there? Like, maybe just start thinking about it. I'm like, okay. And literally 4 months go by, and I get an email from a potential client that they wanted me to come and do a retreat or be a part of their retreat. And they're like a big, very well known. It's well and good. And I got to do like, it was part of their food demo retreat thing in Miraval. Yeah. And so it was like, all I needed to do was start to talk about this, to start to see the wheels change and things start to take shape. So I'd say summer of 2019, I really knew that there was more to my business that I wanted to add on and develop and evolve into as I was evolving. And at that same time, I really started to get into the spiritual world. And, you know, I've always loved astrology, but then I started to hear about human design and channeling with your guides and way more than just meditation. And then it was March of the pandemic, I ended up doing this course called Activate Your Life Purpose because I was freaking out. I was like, there's so much I want to do and I'm just stuck and I'm feeling like I can't do it. Like I've already boxed myself in. I don't know how to make this pivot. And I didn't have the confidence in myself. And I remember I needed to have other people around me that could give me advice and that I could just bare my soul to without any judgment or influence. And so I joined that. It was pretty much like a mentorship program. It was very intimate, 10 people, and it was for 3 months. And after the end of the 3 months, I was like, I have to talk about this stuff. It was all in me, like talking about my story and how all this had happened. It was like, I'm going to explode if I don't do this. But then I was too scared. And it took another 2 years pretty much for me to have the courage to slowly lay the foundation. Like I knew that this was inevitable. Starting this podcast, starting this journey of really showing up the way that I have always dreamed of, it was inevitable. So what I started to do was slowly on Instagram, warm up my audience and warm myself up to talking about the things that actually matter. So not just about food, but maybe even how food relates to channeling. And when you eat, you know, really good food, like you just become more clear so you can actually receive the downloads that are meant for you and you feel good in your body so that you can take action on all of this. So it was this really, like, to me, it all makes sense in retrospect, but it was this strange, like 3.5 year span of kind of flirting with it, knowing it, then really knowing it, then freaking out, then starting to slowly every single day take a little bit of aligned action to then I entered a mastermind that you were in. And I'm like, now is the time. And everything just like fell into place. And I'm like, I'm never going to do it if I don't do it now. And what better than to celebrate? Like, I just turned 33. Let's do this. I have nothing to lose. Like, can I just trust myself? And so here we are.
Oh my God. It goes back to the self-trust, and you just went all in. I'm so proud of you for launching this podcast because like, even though it's so amazing, I already listened to both episodes, like so good. I love it. And like your voice is amazing. I'm sure you hear it all the time that like you just have such a like enjoyable voice to listen to. Like I genuinely enjoy listening to the podcast, plus the value, the inspiration, like it's overall so amazing. But what I think is so magical is like that this was a pivotal moment for you. And it's so much deeper than just putting the podcast up. It's like almost like symbolizing you stepping into this next version of yourself that's been screaming for you ever since you got into that relationship when you were 16, is what it sounds like.
Yes. Oh my God, that is it. So this is hilarious that you said that, because I don't even think I really realized that that's how far back it occurred. Because when I was growing up, I was super like wild and like allowed all my weirdness to shine through. But as I got older, I started to suppress that. I felt like I needed to be this perfect version of Marie, and who needed to be so nice and people pleasing. But that can only get you so far. And people can smell that from a mile away, especially on social media. Like, we are so drawn to people who are just themselves because they give others the permission to do that. And when I finally allow myself to like, just be crazy, just act as you are, because again, like, you're allowing others to step into that. And I felt like this is a huge part of why I'm here, because I suffered going through half of my life as a version that was not fully me. And I don't want anyone to ever have to go through that. It's like, and I know we do, but the sooner that we can come out of that, oh God, it's so beautiful. Like, I'm just obsessed with people when they're just like their weirdest and their wildest self. I'm like, thank you. Can we all please do that? Like, everyone is so much more fun this way, and everyone gets to jump on their timeline of success and embodiment and figure out what they really want in this life when they can actually tap back into that. And now really showing up online, yes, it's scary, but it's almost like the first 5 times you do it, the first 5 times you talk about it, like the Band-Aid's been ripped. People know what you're doing now. They see the evolution. It's like, okay, you could have also been really dramatizing this in your head too, because I'm sure people picked up on this way before I launched the podcast.
Oh my God, I love it. And I just love that you have given yourself this permission slip. I know we keep coming back to that because it's inspiring the people listening to have that same permission slip, that it's okay to change. It's okay to disrupt your own norm and to break out of the matrix. Like, that's what this podcast is about. And it's like, you are the living embodiment of breaking out of the matrix.
Oh my God, there's just one thing I have to say, because there was this moment in my life and I'll never forget it. And it kind of like links everything together. And I think this is really, really helpful for people who were in similar situations. So I'm just going to set a little background. Like, in astrology, I have Gemini placements all over. And in human design, I'm a manifesting generator. And I didn't know this when I was 16, right? Like, for us, it's all about adding and versatility and trying and moving. And if something's not working, we go and we do something else. Like, we don't just stick to one thing until we die. We evolve as everyone else does, but a little bit differently. And I'll never forget, I was playing tennis with my mom, and I was just like, Mom, I'm over this. Like, thanks for the tennis lessons, but like, I got to move on to, maybe I want to try piano now. And she just laughingly said to me, she's like, Marie, you're a jack of all trades, but a master at none. And I took that in, like, this 16-year-old self. I know she didn't mean that negatively. She just kind of jokingly said it. But when I heard that, I was like, oh my God, I'm never going to achieve anything in my life because I can't commit. I can't stick to one thing. And society, especially in her generation, was very much, you do one thing, you climb the corporate ladder, and you do that until you retire. And it doesn't matter if you have passion for it or not. And luckily my mom does. She has passion for what she does, so it worked out for her. But for someone like me, where it's always been in my nature as a very young person to want to experiment, to do tennis, to try singing, to try acting, to try this, to try that. And so I think that's actually why I became so obsessed with wanting to prove myself in the food industry, because I had this weird idea of, well, I got to master something until guess what? I found out that freaking quote, it doesn't end there. There's a whole other line to it. So the full quote actually goes, jack of all trades, master of none, but oftentimes better than a master of one. So it's actually a compliment, and you know who it was written for? William freaking Shakespeare. So it's like, go on and experiment, because you're learning about yourself. You're learning what you love, what you want to do. And when I learned that part of the equation, it helps set me free to realize I don't need to just do food. I can add everything with it. I can do whatever I want, because that's what's in alignment for me. And everyone listening to this can do what they want to, because that's in alignment for them. So if it's a one track thing, oh my God, you're so lucky. I feel like that's really freaking cool. But if you're not, and you're feeling confused, why do you want to just drop things after you've like learned so much about them and move on? Because that's for you too. Maybe you're here to learn and synthesize that information, then spread it, and then move on to the next. Like, all of it is welcome, and all of it is so needed.
That is so powerful. And that was like a huge breakthrough light bulb moment for me. I hope people watch this on YouTube so they could see my face, but
I saw it.
oh my God, because that has stuck with me for a while, because I've always felt like that. And I remember I had this experience where I thought that, like, I had bought this course last November, and it was like, you need to just make one course. Everybody needs to buy it. And if people aren't buying it, like, basically you suck and your marketing sucks. And I had this instilled in my mind. And this is actually why I joined our mastermind, because I was so traumatized from it. And I was like brainwashed is honestly the word, that like this was the only way to do things. You have to do one thing repeatedly. And if you don't, like, you're a failure. And it was causing so much friction that I actually got to a point where I was feeling depressed. And that's something that I had never faced before. And it was like scary. Like, I was going to therapy, and I just remember every single day being like, I'm a failure because I can't grow this one thing.
Wow.
And it's because I'm also a manifesting generator, and it's just not aligned for me to do the same thing over and over and over again. So I hope, like, anyone listening, that story / quote inspires as much as it just inspired me, because even though, like, I'm still undoing that brainwashing a little bit, like, it's come a long way since it, but also just remembering that it's like we're on our own individual paths.
Yes. Yes. And that's it. And, you know, when I really started to dive more into human design and astrology, it just felt so nourishing, because it reminded me of how unique I am, which means everyone else is so unique. And when we can really tap into that, it makes the world a way more interesting and beautiful and accepting place.
Yes.
And what's funny too, it's like, I know you say this about you feeling a little brainwashed and how your experience happened, but from an outside perspective, I see you doing all these amazing things. So it's like, I can innately see your manifesting generator side come full force and through. And so I think sometimes we do get in our head where it's like, oh, like, how am I going to move through this? But it's like, the people who love you and like can really see you, like we've seen it far before. You're really even putting it to the fullest extent out there, which is really cool too, because you're just always going to grow and evolve. And I love that you know that about you now. And it can happen faster. Like, the more that you know about yourself and how you work, like, everything that you want just happens a little bit faster. So it's a good way to start getting into it. So
Marie, I love you. You are so amazing. I love chatting with you. And I want to also hear and almost highlight you a little bit too, and hear, like, what's your big vision for your brand moving forward? Like, tell us where you're headed. You've obviously gone through these like monumental changes that have shaped you to this very moment that have obviously all happened in such perfect and divine timing for you. So where are you headed? What are you manifesting? What's your vision?
Oh my God, that feels like a great question. So I'm really excited about the podcast, because it really is like taking these ideas and actually using my voice the way that I've been dreaming to use it. And so what I found, like, even just having the podcast be live for the last 3 weeks and having like 4 episodes on there now, being committed to it, it's giving me room to see how much more I want to do. Like, more, I want to create but it might not necessarily be programs, but it's like these short burst experiences where I'm moving through something, I'm learning, and I just need to be able to express it so I can help other people on their journey that are going through very similar things, that it can really resonate with them, and just learning and growing and really sharing and showcasing that. And I've always wanted to create a space that people just can plug into and feel alive and electrified. And I have some ideas for that in the works. And so you'll kind of start to hear more about it in the mastermind, but I'm playing around with some ideas of how that can be more tangible, because it really resonates with me. Like I want to create something that was missing from my experience of the last 6 years of going through this huge evolution of finding success and then losing myself and then coming back to myself and trusting and then catapulting in a whole new direction. And so there's a lot going on, but the hub for right now will be definitely Instagram and the podcast, and then some things to come in the future. So I'm very excited.
That. Oh my God, that is so exciting. So are you thinking more like master classes and programs and things like that, where people can actually learn from you in a more intimate container?
Yes, yeah, exactly. Like that's what I'm really craving, is like that intimacy where people can really show up, and then also like embrace it, but then share what they're going through, so then we can really like hash it out and understand. So more intimate moments and group settings, but also maybe it's some type of membership or just area where people can really plug in and we really go deep for months at a time. But like breath work and having someone come on to talk about astrology, and there's a lot of that, because when I was going through my journey, I kind of picked up all these random bits and bobs, and I really wish there was a hub for me that I could really just plug into and feel like, okay, I got this, and people see me and we're all in this together, which I definitely didn't feel like. I thought I was the lone wolf, like no one else was going through this, when it turns out pretty much the whole world has been.
I love that. And I love this like desire that you have, this almost like burning passion where like, I am going to make this happen. Yes. And this is what I say in like all my containers as well. And I've no doubt, because it's like, I always say, if you can see success in one area of your life, you can see it anywhere. And I even just talked about this on another podcast recording I did a couple weeks ago. And it's like, so powerful that it's like, I know you're going to be so successful because I feel this desire within you, this burning passion. And it's almost like there's no plan B. There's no other way. Like the only way is for me to be successful. Like my success is inevitable.
Yes. And I remember when I was on the food journey, I would tell that to myself every day. Like, someone has to do it. Why can't it be me? And that fueled me like no other. And it's again, like tapping back into that. Yeah. And tapping back into that level of trust and knowing that you got it. And there is no plan B. It's like your plan A, actually your plan A, B, C, you're all of it. So just get going.
Yes. And I also love something you said earlier about the tiny inspired action, like the daily micro actions. Yes. And I think more people need to hear that, listen twice, replay it, that they need to be taking action every single day, even if that looks like, for me in my health journey, let's say going on a walk in the middle of the day, because that's something I never prioritize. So it's like those daily actions are going to compound over time. And I have no doubt that you are going to run the most beautiful of programs, memberships, whatever you choose, because I so feel your passion and your desire. And I'm so excited for you.
Oh my God, I just love you so much.
I love you.
Thank you for saying that. You are so easy and so fun to talk to. Like, you really are just like, it feels like I'm in the living room with you, like just chatting up, best friends, just having some coffee or whatever, and like talking about our journeys. So thank you for letting me share.
I so feel that too. And I was listening to a podcast, the Skinny Confidential, him and her podcast.
Oh, I
love that one. And so someone had asked them, like, don't you get tired of like doing all these interviews? And they're like, no, it's like as if we were to go out to dinner with friends, talk with them, and just someone's recording it. And that's exactly how I feel with you.
Oh my God. And what's so funny is like, it was so ridiculous. Like, I started to get nervous before this, but the second that you asked a question, it felt so effortless. I'm like, there's no nerves. And then it all went away and I have no nerves. So thank you. You just have this ability to like really allow people to be themselves and to express so freely and without judgment. And that's a really powerful thing. So thank you.
Thank you. That like warmed my heart. I'm like getting teary eyed. I'm like, that was so sweet. Well, I'm so grateful for you. So happy we had you on and would love to have you on again. You are welcome back anytime. And tell everyone where they can find you, how they can connect with you.
Oh, yeah. So you can find me on Instagram. I'm pretty much on there every day. So it's marie.reginato. It's like T-O. Everyone thinks it's with a D-O. So Marie Reginato. And then my podcast is called Weird, Wild, and Woo.
I love it. I love it. And we're going to link everything for everybody as well.
Great. Oh my
That's
God.
perfect.
So
Thank you so much for coming on.
Oh my God. I can't wait to have you on like right now. We're going to do our swap.
Yes. All right. Talk soon.
Bye.